Okay, guys, thank you all for joining today. I'm very excited. I'm Joe Licata. I'm the founder and owner of RepPath, and today we have the first in a series with sales leaders around the country that we're going to be doing every Wednesday at 3 o'clock. So I'm very excited to launch this, guys. This is something that is close to my heart because being a sales manager for years, I always wanted to keep it real with my team. And, at RepPath, we always do that where we're always talking about what are the real challenges that reps and managers face in this business. And, I know you guys hear me doing podcasts all the time and hearing my opinion, but we're lucky to have a special guest today. I want to introduce Molly Garland. Molly is a regional sales manager at Inari Medical. And Molly, just to start off, give a little bit of your background and what's currently going on in your life and your position, so they have a little clarity.
Well, first, thank you for having me. I love being a part of this series. So, regional sales manager at Inari Medical, recently bought by Stryker, which is my first acquisition. So that's been a really interesting transition, as it's not fully complete. The purchase is through, but we're going through that. So as a manager, that's a big navigation. I've been with them about 5 years. I was an account manager for 4, and then I've been a regional sales manager a little over a year. And this will be my 18th year in the industry. So I have done everything from drug rep for about 5 for Pfizer and Alcon mixed in there. And then I started my device career as a field clinical. And I worked for Boston Scientific in their spinal cord stim division. Then I went to Medtronic and I worked in the advanced energy division. So I was an account manager. And I've been in FST at pretty much every role, training people. And then I did a small stint with Philips. I thought I wanted to go into training, and I realized, still sales, where I was a national sales trainer for Philips for their patient monitoring division, which then brought me to Inari, and just hitting 5 years in May with Inari. So that's kind of a little 30 seconds of my background. And I am based I live in West Michigan. Everybody in Michigan has to do it. But I am the regional sales manager for the Detroit area. So I live half at home and half in a lovely hotel, as you guys can see behind me.
And is your region, do you just cover Detroit?
So I cover from Ann Arbor to the west, all the way to the Lake Shore. So Port Huron, downriver to like Ohio border, and then up to Flint in the north, kind of Flint, Pontiac, that area in the north. So about 30 accounts. And then I have 9 under me. I have 7 account managers, 2 FCSs. So field clinicals. So
awesome.
Good size. Yeah, of course.
I appreciate the background. Thank you for that. And again, just to go over the title of today's podcast, it's what hiring managers really care about. So someone with your experience, we're going to just dive right in. When you're looking at candidates, what are some of the qualities that you really look for that, for those candidates to stand out in the interview process?
So I'm kind of like, I have some staunch, weird tests that I do give them. I want to know, like, just come in, shake my hand, look me in the eye. I'm still like old school where when a candidate comes in, I want them to like look crisp and clean. I don't need expensive clothes, but I want you to be at least pressed and everything like that. Sure. And then I want you to be real with me, not so real that I hear your life story. I once in an interview he was like, I want this job because I want better insurance. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's not what I look for in a rep, but I want you to be real with me. The one thing I will say is, as I've sat in on interviews for the last 5 years in Inari, there's definitely a gut instinct. I don't know that you can teach, where like I can just feel if someone's going to be the right role, going to be a hard worker and everything like that. But I want real experience, and I don't want fluff with it. That's for sure. So, being clean. And I think you and I have talked about, like, I want you to show up. I'm old school. I want you to show up with just a copy of your resume, at least for me to see. And so those are the things I look for in a candidate. And then one thing about our business, as you and I were talking about prior to starting this, is I look for a lot of self-awareness, how you interact with my team and how you interact with me, your cadence of interaction, because our job is a bit of a delicate one where you're actually teaching a physician how to do the procedure sometimes, or you're guiding them through something. And obviously ego plays a role to that. They're have many more degrees than we do, even if we might be the subject matter expert. So I need self-awareness. You need to be able to read a room for it too. So, and that plays into, I usually can pick up like how you interview, how you do post-interview, your follow-up, all of those things, like what that looks like.
And you got, again, some of these I'm just you create more questions just by
Yeah, you're good. I figured I can squirrel us easy. So I'm the king of that.
So, but you mentioned something simple, walking in there with a clean resume, looking sharp. I get this every day. I know we touched on this, on a couple of our side calls, cover letters. Do you care about them or waste of time?
Waste of time. Cover letter is a waste of time. I actually made some notes. So in my personal opinion, a cover letter is a waste of time. This trend that I mentioned to you earlier that we were laughing about is this headshot trend. Now I have a headshot. It's on my LinkedIn, and I think you should have a headshot on your LinkedIn. But to put it on your resume or your cover letter, no, thank you. I can see you in front of me. Thank you. But I do think your resume should be one page. And I was always told that one page, bullet points of what you've done, where you covered, what you some roles, types of things. I don't need your whole, even if you're just out of college, I don't need your whole, what sorority, what those things. I graduated from this university from this year to this year. Maybe you were a collegiate athlete, put that in there type of thing. But otherwise, and then the other thing is, I actually want you to be honest of all your roles. I interviewed recently back in the end of last year, and a gentleman was interviewing and he left out a whole entire job. And turns out, small town, one of my account managers had been a teammate of his 2 jobs ago, and he didn't put it on there. And she saw him on the list and was like, he doesn't have this on here. And I was like, kind of red flag, why not? She was like, he left us an alert. She came on, stayed for 4 months, and then just bounced really fast, which happens. And I know people get a dream job, and these situations happen, but it's how you handle it. So those are the things, put everything on there. I don't need your college jobs, but your professional jobs on there, and kind of keep it simple, because in sales, I need you to talk to me. I don't want to see 5 pages worth of something, because I need to know you can actually have a conversation.
Sure. Now, that you bring up a great point when it comes to, reps that want to leave out jobs because of something bad that's happened there.
Yeah.
If a rep did tell you, hey, Molly, unfortunately, it didn't work out, I got fired at my last job, is that a deal killer for you?
It's not a deal killer for me. I think as when you've been in the industry long enough, you see that a lot of times places go through, Phillips used to call it running lean, which is such a passive aggressive way to say they were doing big layoffs type of thing. Or, I have seen roles where, there are terrible managers out there. We've all had one at some point in time. So I'm willing to give that person a pass, but you can bet I'm going to do 6 degrees of separation, find somebody who knows somebody, and figure out why. Yeah. What was the real story for it?
So if their story backs up and they just got fired because, they just had an issue with the manager, and it turns out the manager wasn't that great, you're still fine moving forward.
Exactly. Now you got fired for some offense that, wasn't necessarily professional. Thanks, but no thanks type of thing. Which I've been in that situation before, where I've just kind of said we're going in a different direction, if you will. And I'm a soft heart. I want everybody to have a job, but you got to be the right fit, especially in the role I'm in now. It's a very unique compared to other things. So yeah, I would give them a chance, but I do some digging. As a female, we're pretty good detectives for things.
And what about, because I get these questions every day, reps reaching out to you before the interview or during the interview process? How do you, because just as a side note, I train a lot of candidates to send a thank you email before the interview, because everyone does them at the end, which is nice, but just thanking Molly, thank you for your setting up the time tomorrow. I'm very excited for this meeting, blah, blah, blah. but just overall want to see what's your thoughts on communication with the hiring manager during this process, and if is there anything that's like a red flag, too much or
Yes.
too little, or yeah, if
Yeah.
you can touch on that.
So it's funny that you say that because Inari has a very unique process that they're kind of moving away from truly, but I went through the process. So I am once again old school, like the be clean cut, have a nice paper resume, but I think you should have a thank you email to them. I mean, really, truly, you interview in the morning, it needs to be that by that evening type of thing. So I like your idea of right prior. That's totally fine, because if it was a job I was really interested in, I would sit in my car and like start typing out one and then input to it things we spoke about to make it more personal during the interview. But I would have something put into my notes in my phone, like, hey, you took the time. I know you're busy, et cetera, et cetera. So that is a wonderful thing. So with Inari, and what our process used to be was what we call hyper communication. And so you would have your first interview. Your first interview was basically, you're talking 20 out of the 60 minutes, they're talking 40 minutes, and kind of telling you about Inari, because we were such a new thing to the market and we're such a unique company. And then what you did after that interview was basically how much you showed you wanted the job. And so that was what we called hyper communication. And so you were doing an extreme amount of due diligence. And it got to the point where like you were expected to go into hospitals, speak to physicians, speak to coordinators, speak to the emergency room, speak to hospitalists, all of these departments that might touch this patient. And we've had to pivot over the years. And so what you would do is you would send an email each day. And if in the beginning, if someone didn't send an email each day, I was like, how bad do you really want it? Type of thing. And so over the years, customers have kind of gotten sick of a million candidates contacting them.
Sure.
And then two, it was like, okay, we're hiring based off of who can do the most legwork here. Does that really show a sign of it? And I get exactly why. It was like, okay, you've got to jump on the market for understanding the market if you were to be hired. And so we recently have kind of shied a little bit away from it, but I still want to see some of that effort. There is a fine line between too much communication. So I have had, prior to the end of 2024, I had 2 FCS positions open and an AM position open all in one quarter. And I had to pivot from that hyper communication because I know myself, it's holidays, it's the end of the year, it's everything. And I was like, if I have 3 openings and say 8 to 10 in each opening, and they're sending me an email a day, I might lose my mind. And I didn't want to have a bias towards these people who could be great candidates for it. So I kind of was like, I want to hear from you, but I don't need to hear from you every day. At your leisure, kind of, but I also tell people, do your due diligence still. I don't need this formal daily email, seeing end users and everything like that, but you got to see if this job is right for you. Like, this is a commitment because it's an on-call role. It's a commitment for your family. It's a commitment for your children. It's a commitment for your friendships. There is a lot that's non-monetary that you experience here or miss. You got to know that it's right for you. So I want you to do your due diligence like you were buying a business. I mean, you're going to be the GM of your business. So long story long of being winded of that, there's communication and then there's too much. And I had a couple FCSs, bless their souls, coming out of like labs and things that contacted me too much. And I was like, not answering. I can't handle this right now. It was a turn off to me type of thing. So from there, I would say probably get 2 LinkedIn messages a day on average of people around the country saying, I'm interviewing for a job. Can I pick your brain for a few minutes? So I try to make time for it, but there's something is too much.
Yeah, it's too much. You still
That
have
was a long-winded answer.
no, but that's real. So that's
but your thank you note, still your thank you note. I mean, I remember being 22, going to like round robin interviews that were held in hotels.
I did that.
I would like go out write a handwritten thank you note, and then walk back in the room and like just set it on the table and walk away, type of thing. And I'm like, I don't know if that was the right thing to do, but I got to set myself apart. So like, I'm still a big fan of the thank you note and everything.
What about candidates reaching out to reps on your team to really learn more about you as a manager and also the role and what good looks like and yada, yada, yada?
I am a huge fan of that. So you had sent me a couple of questions. I have one here. You had worded it. Let me find it because I think it was number 4 that you sent me. I have them here. Bear with me. And it was talking about cultural fit, I believe. And so because of the type of cell that we have, and the first manager who hired me, his name is Amar Miko, and still just somebody I respect and look up to this day. He and a gentleman named Drew Van Vliet, and they're both still in our organization and leaders. They told me in my first interview, they said, it is a team vote. And I was like, okay, so like voted off around the island type of thing. And so I know not everybody in Inari looks at it this way and everything, but we now have a call model where on weekends you take call for the rest of the team. 2 people take call on a weekend for all 30 of our accounts. And so you need to actually trust this person. Like you need to know they're not going to make your doctor angry. They're not going to make your staff angry. They're not going to ruin something in your account, or you need to trust that they're clinically competent so that something bad doesn't happen and a patient doesn't have an adverse event. So I actually make it a team vote. So I want you to contact my team. And I have a pretty tenured team. This fortunately and unfortunately is not your entry level job. And so I want everybody's vote. So like when I was interviewing, we had a Christmas breakfast and everybody had to sit down and vote for who they wanted and who made the most sense. And that counted just of like who you got along with and who you might not care for based off their questions. But my team is very kind in the fact that I think some of them gave each candidate like an hour time of our like top 2 for each role. So, which was really, more above and beyond.
That's awesome. That's the first I've heard of that. That's impressive though, but it makes sense, especially in your business, at Inari, where you guys are all hands on deck, helping each other out. Where it's
every day.
A lot of other districts and regions. Let's be real, a lot of guys, they help each other out, covering cases here and there, but they're still fighting for leaderboards and they want to outdo one another in the rankings to get higher payouts. So that's great though.
We win as a team and we lose as a team is how I see it. Like we make the number and it's like, some people are having great quarters, some people aren't, but it's a team effort type of thing. So you really actually have to. And so in turn, I call us a family. Like I've met spouses, a majority of my people, aside from just the new ones I had. Well, just one I haven't met yet. I've met kids. Everything we do stuff together. And so their opinion really matters to me. And like I said, this is not an entry level job. So they all have had a lot of experiences too, that have thoughtful questions and what they're looking for. That makes it more than just my decision.
Sure.
Which is great. So,
and speaking of these candidates, what's a candidate that really if you can remember any off the top of your head that really knocked your socks off, and not just with their background that they were, they have an amazing experience and sales results, but something during the interview process that you're like, wow, that kind of stood out. And that really swayed my decision.
So
actually, out of the box.
What's hilarious is my now boss, I was part of his interview process. I was hired before him. His name's Tobin Pearson. And he interviewed about 6 months after I had started the job. And he was just one of those people where from the first phone call, he and I were like, did we just become best friends? And in the end, he and I think he got me in a dinner while he was interviewing with a physician I was trying to get in with. And I feel like one other meeting or something. And so really just was like, all right, let's roll with this. Because people will ask me, can I come into a case with you? And I'm like, no, I don't need the distraction when a patient is like life and death type of thing. But like he stepped outside the box, but still kept it within the realm of what I wanted. And so we were counterparts for couple years. Then he became my RSM, and then he helped me become an RSM over here. And then he recently was promoted to my AD, which I always joke. I'm like, he's my boss, but I boss him around. But he really stood out. I'll never forget us, like, just hitting it off. And then he's like, all right, well, we're having dinner with these two physicians at this time at this restaurant. Meet me here. I'm like, okay, all right,
That's
I'm in.
awesome. Yeah, that's definitely outside the box. And I just love the aggressiveness of that. And again, that's showing someone what your relationships are instead of telling them,
Yes.
which is very impressive.
So many people will say, oh, I know this doctor and I'm friends with this doctor, and those types of things. And it's like, you ask that, and I'm like, who?
So that's a good point. Do you care, and do you test it?
I will test it because I got a little bit of sass in me, so I will test it. I care if you lie. So I am very much I want the truth and I want transparency. I think my team knows, like, I'm probably too honest with them, but to me, that's how you build respect with your team, and that's how you build, I hate this word, but followership with your team. But you need followership. You need your team to stick with you when times are tough, and things like that. So I want honesty. If you do have relationships, like, that's great. Maybe that doc sends me a text or something like that. And I have had several who sent me a text. Unfortunately, I didn't hire this one FCS candidate, and he's kind of on my, like, next list if I have another spot open. And we had multiple docs shoot me text, and I'm like, all right, this is somebody's putting their money where their mouth is type of thing. But if somebody says they know it. Now, I also, on the flip side, I don't ever want to get myself in a sticky situation of hiring, say, a doc's family member.
Sure.
Or something like that. So if a doc comes to me with it, it's very hard. And if they don't jive with the team, I don't want to upset that physician either. So I try to just stay away from that. So as long as a candidate, is truthful with it and is like, yeah, this doc knows me, or I'm familiar with them, and it tracks, then I'm good. But if it's a sticky situation, no thanks.
No, well, it's a quick funny story. I had that happen to me, and I had an opening for a regional sales manager at one of my companies, and the doctor recommended his son, and I can't make this up. He was eating a sandwich in the middle of the Zoom call, literally sitting there chewing on a sandwich in the middle of the call with me. I'm like, is this a bad time? Like that? He's like, no, man, I'm sorry. I just didn't have any lunch. He's like, we can keep going. And he just kept sitting there eating the sandwich. And I cut the interview off within like 5 minutes. And I'm like, listen, I'll have to get back to you. And I told his dad, I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm like, your son's eating a sandwich on the call. I can't possibly see any further right now. And it was awkward because he still defended him. You got to give him a chance. That's stupid on his part, but it was like, no, I'm not doing this again. It was obviously it's very unlikely that's ever going to happen again, but it's scary.
Oh, well, you get yourself in a sticky situation. You don't want to ruin the relationship with the doc. Like we had one try and throw a son-in-law in the day before I was doing my final interviews. And I just said, I'm sorry, respectfully, I'm too far in the process, type of thing. And when I looked at his resume, he'd been a teacher, which is, to be a teacher of children is a really difficult job, but he'd only been in the industry like 2 years. And I was like, this is I need a little bit more experience from an account manager position and everything. But I didn't want to be handcuffed to a relative of a physician.
Sure.
Especially when I had to let him go. Oh God.
No, not a good place to be.
I'd rather just keep it separate.
A couple other things that are big topics that, again, a lot of misperceptions, but want to get your real advice. Brag books. Do you care about them? Do you still actually look into them, or do you care more about, someone could be a 5-time President's Club winner. That looks great on paper. Is it more about the discussion at that point to find out their strategy? If you can, talk more about that. So brag books. Not a fan. You care.
I'm not a fan anymore. And I myself had one. I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I've got to have one to move into medical device from pharmaceutical sales. And so you had it, and it just was this clunky thing. And then when I was at Boston as an FCS, we won President's Club, I don't know, 2 years out of my 4. And it was like, do I take the crystal trophy with me?
Or take a picture of it. Yeah, it's like,
My thing is like anybody can fake a brag book. You got Adobe, you know what I mean? I would rather hear about what you did to get there, what the challenges were, and I'm even okay with you going, you know, I was at the right place at the right time. I just so happened to see this surgeon. We had a great conversation, and he loved it, and that went from there, type of thing. I want to hear about, you know, like when I won a Rolex at Medtronic, and by the time I won the Rolex, I was 8.5 months pregnant, and it was like, for me, I wanted to tell a hiring manager. I remember sitting and telling Drew Van Vliet and Amar Miko, yeah, I got some perseverance in me. Like I can do tough things. I won a Rolex at 8.5 months pregnant. I couldn't go to the ceremony because I couldn't fly when I was 37 weeks pregnant for a national sales meeting, but I won it, you know? So like, I want to hear, sure, you got it. You put it on your little bullet point and you told me all the things, but what did it take to get there? And, you know, who helped you and how did you do it? Our business is a lot of program building. And I have done a couple roles, you know, Boston with spinal cord stim, like we were talking about earlier, you know, that was program building. That was like promoting your physicians to primary care so that they knew the service was available, and really building up a total hospital cell and total office cell and things like that. So tell me about those things. Right. And I want you to make a correlation for it, but you also got to do your research enough to make the correlation too. Like I want that for the first interview, even a little bit of correlation. You don't even know like products and specs, but or clinical research, but I want to know a little bit.
So if you don't have to bring the brag book, how important is it? Now, obviously you're working with recruiters. Recruiters are telling you, hey, John Smith here, he's a great candidate because of X, Y, and Z. They give you a little blurb, send the resume. How big are numbers on the resume of sales results for you? You know, to really, does that really jump out at you, or is it more about
it's 5-second glance? I'd say it's a relationship, 5-second glance and talking about the experience. I won't lie. I did it when I was interviewing for my RSM role, even though everybody knew me. We have, you know, over 300 reps now, but I think I was like number 70 when we were hired. And so I'm by Inari years old. They're like dog years. So so when I was interviewing with people who know me, you know, most of my career here. And I don't really care about seeing the number. I want to hear about it. You know, you can put like, I made my number, you know, or I made so many quarters. But at the time when I was interviewing, I made 14 out of 14 quarters. And I ended up like listing them all out. And to me, I was kind of like, all right, looks ridiculous. Right. But at the same time, I was kind of proud of it. So, right. You know, that type of thing. So while I say I don't need it, I did it myself. So
well, I guess the point being, would you ever reject someone because they have too many numbers on their resume, or there's like too much
stuff on a resume? It puts me off a little bit, but not terrible. I want to know, you know, why'd you put this here, type of thing. And I'm also a very blunt person. So why'd you put all of this here? What is this?
Right. Yeah, you're real.
Tell me about it.
Well, that's great to know. But that, I mean, that's true. I've seen a lot of reps where they list every quarter, and it's like, okay, at this point, you've been there 5 years. You could do yearly percent to quotas or yearly rankings. I mean, it's just to shorten it up. Other big topic. Again, I know your answer to this, but I want you to share it. 30, 60, 90s.
No, don't print one. Don't take the time. But if we're in our second interview and you've done your due diligence, I want to know how you would approach the territory, if you will, but just speak to it to me, you know, just say like, these are some areas when I was doing my research that I think we have growth opportunities. You know, these are some watch out areas. Those are the types of things. Cause let's face it, in the first 90 days, you're still drinking from a fire hose, especially in how clinical our role is. Like,
Yeah, you have no idea how to run that territory.
you have no idea.
Right.
So, I mean, in ours, it's almost like you take almost a year to really hit your stride type of thing. So it's a moot point. We did for a long time look for a business plan. And I can say when I interviewed with Medtronic, I did a business plan as best I could. Actually, interviewed with Spectranetics, did not get the job, but did a business plan because that's what they required of you to do. And what's funny is the person they hired, I ended up taking his Medtronic job. And so it's 6 degrees of separation, but I remember doing one there and them being impressed, but it's, you can only go so far with your research without, like I said, upsetting customers in what you know, especially if you're entering into a different market. So I remember with Inari, they wanted you to have one. They wouldn't tell you. It was like a secret thing that you weren't supposed to know you needed a presentation, but I charmed someone into telling me. And I had like a 40 slide presentation of everything. I used Definitive Healthcare to look through everything and really just did my best. I remember I sweated it for days type of thing. But in reality, what they learn about me, which is really important because I can teach wires and catheters, but like I can't teach self-awareness always. So, so I don't think you need the 30, 60, 90. I think you need to have a plan, but you can talk to the plan. You don't
have to come and print it out. But as long as you have,
I don't need you to spend $100 at FedEx Kinko's.
Sure. But if you showed them that you did the research, you got specific about this actual role and the players in the role, then that's the main takeaway.
Definitely. And so my last 3, I deviated from Inari's true, like I said, their interview pathway. And I said, do your due diligence and come back to me in your final interview with what you learned. And all 3 ended up giving me a presentation. And one of them just wowed my socks off with a presentation, but he never once mentioned anything about a patient. And this guy was like, you'd make a great business development, you make a great national account manager, but in the end, you did all this work and you never actually paid attention to our ethos. So it can kind of bite you, if you do this whole thing and you don't get the true point of it. Sure. So, you talked a good talk, your suit's crisp and your tie clip's nice, but you didn't actually when I let him down, I kind of regret saying it. I said to him, I go, I looked at you the whole interview and I thought to myself, I can't see this guy in scrubs. You did a nice job on your business plan, but I can't see this guy in scrubs. So you don't necessarily have to have it as long as you can tell me what your plan would be.
Okay. Well, that's great.
From your research, if you will.
Okay. And big question I get every single day at the end of the interview, the close. Okay. So what are closes that we all know you have to close at the end of the interview, but what are closes that are creative or that you like to hear that are very, again, just real? Like you don't have to come up with some crazy, unique close that no one thinks of. Just some of the common ones that's impactful for you or
I think you always should clarify, especially as I'm someone that can be long-winded. So like, I might not have answered the question in my head I did, but maybe not type of thing. So I think you should clarify first if the person has any hesitations. Hopefully you can read body language to see when you were talking, if they had any hesitations. And if you are interviewing and looking someone in the eye, because I've had some that like look down, I've had some that look like, and stuff like that. But if you're looking at the person and seeing the reaction to your words, you should have a feel of how that interview went. And so I want you to clarify, like, do you have any hesitations? Is there anything that I didn't address or didn't, disclose to you? The gentleman I talked about that didn't put all of his jobs on there and had bounced from one. That's when we got him. We were like, hey, man, we hear you did this. And he's like, whoa, and didn't handle it well, and then I want you to not be awkward. It is awkward because, everybody remembers like the YouTube Charles, like always be closing, like all those old school ones, but just say like, do you see me as a good fit for this? Or, can you see yourself offering me this job? Because I really want this job. To me, that's a soft close but at the same time showing like a genuine, like we're in this together and this is what we both want if you say yes.
Now, are you a realistic, upfront manager where it'll be like, well, I can see you for this, but I still have two more candidates, or do you always throw in because I've had those managers where they're like, you're my first interview, and I didn't meet with anyone else yet, and they don't want to show their poker face.
Mhm.
Which side do you kind of fall on? Are you more straight up, or you're more poker face when it comes to that?
I will usually say like, hey, listen, I've got, one after you, we have one before you. And I don't want to do an interview alone. Since I've been here, it's always been 2 to 3 of us in it. And I think those are things that you like pick up on cues that maybe one of us missed or something like that. It's good to have a discussion. So I'll say like, hey, I've got one after you, I had one before you, or something of that nature. But I promise you, you're going to hear from me within 24 hours. I think you did a great job or anything like that. And if I don't think you did a great job, I'm just not going to say that. I'm just going to be like, we'll get back to you type of thing. My team does tease me that there's not enough Botox to block what I think, even if I'm not saying it. So if you're paying attention, then I might have a look on my face like,
Right.
yeah, we'll get back to you.
Eyes.
Yeah, yeah. The 11s right here might just be might tell you. So look at me when you're talking to me.
Sure.
But no, I'll just say like, and I do pride myself. I'm very much a timeline person. I'm a timeline person, even like with my account managers to this day of like, if I say I'll get back to you, it's a 24-hour period of getting back to you. Even if I'm relying on somebody else to give me an answer, I'm going to email you and say, this person hasn't answered me yet. I just want to check in, do a pulse check, get back to, So for interviews, I just politely like we are going to discuss it and then we'll be back to you. And I think the last one I finished interviews at 2:00 in the morning and then called every person first thing in the morning, next morning. So
Now, you did mention how important thank yous are, the thank you emails. If someone, will you not send that unless someone gives that thank you email? Or can someone be that good that, you're moving forward no matter what? If they don't send the thank you, you're like, this person is an all-star.
I do feel like this last one, the whole team had voted and then it was just like confirmatory. And I can't even remember if he did send a thank you note. So I want to say, no, I wouldn't because of thank you note, but at the same time, I think I've broken my rules with it type of thing. Not as much maybe on the second interview. I'd like to see it though. I just think I have a Southern grandmother. You write thank you notes for everything. Handwritten notes are great, those types of things. So do your best for it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, again, that's honest though. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
just before we move on, I'm just going to pause for a second.
Mhm.
And James, do we have any questions? Because I just want to open up to the chat room and the crowd to see if they have any questions that they want to share. Because I can't see anything on my end. That's why I'm asking.
There's no questions in the chat as of right now.
Okay.
So
If anyone does pop in, yeah.
there's people in there. There's just no questions. So
Okay. No problem. Thank you, James.
No problem.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess, some of the other things that I want to talk about with in regards to the I'm sorry, I had notes here. I just lost my train of thought. In terms of questions for you during the interview,
Mhm.
what are good questions that reps should be asking, when they're like throughout the process, besides the close, besides,
Mhm.
do I have this job? Like what are insightful questions about the role, about you, about the team that you like to hear?
I like to hear almost like a devil's advocate. Like I want to hear what's the most difficult part of the job coming out of someone. Ask that question. Like what is a challenging, difficult part of the job? Or I do want you to ask me what a day looks like type of thing. I might ask a situation or two of these ones. I don't want to do like the standard, like give me your top 3 strengths or give me your top 3 weaknesses type of thing. But I might throw out a scenario just to measure their level of self-awareness, if you will. So that would be a question I would ask to them, but I want them to ask what the day-to-day looks like. I want them to I'm the type of person like, give me the tea. What happens on, what's a bad day look like? And those types of things, just because this job has extreme highs and extreme lows. And in a lows when you lose a patient and you, even if you did everything you could, it sticks with you. It's the drive home with no sound on. And it is you're laying in bed replaying that case every time. A lot of times we experience patients that come to us that are too sick. So I want you to ask honest questions because I want to be upfront and honest with you with it. And even in the jobs, and I've done the kind of commodity jobs, those types of things, like there's hard days. And what's that? Ask what that looks like. Or two, I've been asked, like, when you were a rep, what did you do on a day where you had nothing going on? Or another one too, like, how'd you set yourself up for a week for success? Those are the types of things that I think are real questions that's going to get a manager going, okay, this person's pretty insightful, pretty thoughtful type of thing. And they're going to try and, be a self-starter, because we all know in this industry, you have to be a self-starter because it's also easy to just sit at home and do nothing type of thing. Like, you really got to have self-motivation to be a sales rep. I've seen people fail at it. So
when you're talking about your day, then does it matter for them to get into like the personal end of their day? Like, for something simple, I get up every day at 5 a.m. and I go for a 3-mile run. That's how I start my day every morning, and I'm at my account at 6:30, like giving a little bit more insight.
Yes, I want you to be a human. I want to know about you. I start every one-on-one call with, like, how was your weekend? Like, what did you do? How are things going? Like, you sound tired. Are you okay? Or, hey, I saw you put through 8 cases this weekend. You should have just canceled with me and we'll talk another time. I care about my people. So yeah, I want to know what you look like as a person. I was lucky enough too, when I was an account manager, that as long as I was getting my job done, it didn't matter what time of day I worked. And I'm fine with that as well. I'm pretty hyper communicative. I talk to my team all the time. I want you to be that way to me. And so, say I did a case in the middle of the night and then came home and took a nap because I got home at 4 a.m. And when you get home from a case at 4 a.m., then you're kind of, just, it's like adrenaline. Like you lay down and you're like, yeah, that went well. Or, you know what I mean? Like, I just saved somebody's life, or helped save, assisted in saving somebody's life. And so then you crash, you go to sleep, and then I'd work out in the afternoon. And so thankfully, as long as you're getting your job done, we're all adults. And I can tell, I mean, like, excuse my language, don't bullshit a bullshitter. Like, I can tell when you're not doing your job. So I want to know, like, how you set yourself up for your day, like what discipline you have, but then showing discipline and everything like that. But then in the flip side too, like, just tell me about yourself, because that shows the person you are. And the person you are is going to be who the person you are in hospitals and things like that. So yeah, I want to hear the personal stuff too.
Personal stuff too.
Yeah.
And what about when reps share their career aspirations, that, if they get, of course, everybody wants to make more money. We're here to make money. We're here to help patients, work with physicians, be an asset. But at the end of the day, you want to make more money.
Yeah.
If they start sharing about questions about career projections, room for growth, can that be viewed as a red flag sometimes if people are a little too aggressive with?
If you're too aggressive with it, for sure. I think it's kind of like it's an odd balance. And you've probably seen this. It's kind of like, I'd equate it to people who stay in a job too long and then interview, or stay in a job too little, where they've got a year and a half at every company. So there's a fine line between being like, I really want to, and I've had people say to me, like, I'm so passionate about this job. I want this job for X, Y, and Z. But I'm also passionate about the company and seeing myself grow with it. And one line that I used to say is, like, I can see myself having this as a career, not just a job. And so those are the things that I think I look for, like some genuine. And then I've had people interview and go, well, how long is the manager track? And it's like,
Yeah.
pump the brakes a little. Pump the brakes.
Exactly.
Like,
You didn't get the job yet, and now you want to be manager. Yeah.
yeah. You got to prove yourself. And I am a big prove yourself. Like, first 6 months, I mean, at Inari, and I tell people this, like, first 6 months going to suck here. You got to see a lot of cases. You got to have doctors trust you. So I got to trust you. And those were things I think I was taught. I mentioned to you earlier, like my dad was a drug rep growing up. My dad then was a national account manager. My mom was a hospital administrator. So like, this world has been a world of mine for a long time and everything. So it was like, you don't take a vacation in the first 6 months. You don't. And I mean, like, I make exceptions, those types of things, but I want to see I'm ready to work, but I want to grow too. Cause you don't want people to be stagnant. So long way of saying that.
Right. Okay. And what is some advice you give to reps trying to break into this industry? And again, you could be real and say, hey, I don't know if this would be for you, but what's your wisdom?
My wisdom is to network, make yourself a LinkedIn. I will be honest with you, aside from my first role when I was poached out of the hospital, I was found on LinkedIn every single time. And LinkedIn's still telling me my profile is only to 80% completion, so I'm not like some rock star on LinkedIn, but I have a nice picture on it. I think, I don't know, I'm okay with it. and I have my roles on there. And then I've had people reach out to me. So I went to Michigan State, and I've had alumni or soon to be alumni reach out to me and send me a message and go, okay, hey, how do I break into this and things like that. And I don't mind that at all, but be active, start following accounts, companies and check the job boards. And I mean, back in the day, I remember just typing every pharmaceutical company I could think of. I was working in the hospital as a exercise specialist in cardiac rehab and stress testing. And I would use the library computer in the basement of the hospital. And I would just type Google pharmaceutical companies. And then I would go in and apply, and everything like that. But so now it's a lot easier, but just your LinkedIn, network with it, and, just be ready for it, type of thing. Practice too. You're going to have a lot of fails. Oh God. What's funny, ironically enough, is learn from those failures. I remember right out of college, and then right as I was leaving Pfizer. Funny story. I interviewed with Stryker twice. First time out of college, and I was not ready. Like, I remember getting the phone call and then going through the Gallup poll. And Stryker's Gallup poll back then was pretty long. I don't know what it is now. And I did not pass it. And so I was like, okay, all right, well, I'll keep trying. And then I was a pharmaceutical rep, and I'd met my husband, and we lived 4 hours away from each other. He proposed. He was my fiance at the time. And Pfizer didn't have a role where he lived. He owned his own business. I needed to move to him. And so I started interviewing, and where we live is Stryker's headquarters and Pfizer's headquarters. They're Animal now headquarters, which is the whitest. And so I was trying everything to get a job to marry the man of my dreams, still my husband 15 years later. And I take the Gallup poll again. And I make it through all these interviews, and I don't pass it. And those failures were like things that I would lay at night and go, okay, could I have said this differently? So you got to learn from the failures. I think, as a long story short, ironically enough, Stryker just purchased my company that I work for. And the day after I found out about the purchase, I woke up in the morning, and my husband, who is just the kindest person, and I wouldn't call him funny. Like, I love him to death, but he's not like a jokester. He woke up, and the first thing he says to me, he goes, "Hey babe, you finally passed the Gallup poll. You work for Stryker now." And I just started laughing. But long story long, there, I learned from those failures, because they ask you all these interview questions. And I remember going through a ton of these Zoom interviews. You were talking about the guy eating the sandwich, but I went through a ton of Zoom interviews where you're wearing a suit on the top and you've got shorts on the bottom, and you're trying to just, but you had to learn from the failures. And I'm one of those people I'll be in the shower and go, okay, what could I have said differently? What could I have done differently from it? So that's my best advice when you're trying to break into fail a lot, learn from failure type of thing. Reach out, make sure your LinkedIn is good. Talk to people,
I'm sorry not to cut you off, because you mentioned LinkedIn. do you double check between a resume and the LinkedIn profile, make sure that they match up, and also any other social media, any other platforms that you look into
I
to see if
don't
like
look
there's
into.
the beer keg stand going on in the background or anything that's eye-opening?
I don't. And I will tell you, like I said, my mom was a hospital administrator and she would always warn me about that. Like, do not have crazy things on your Instagram. Well, back then your MySpace, even God, or your Facebook. And I definitely did through college. I was like any other typical college student. So no, I have not checked any. I've checked competitors to be like, who is this person type of thing, but I have not looked at any candidates. Maybe I should for now. I will look at their LinkedIn though.
But to make sure it matches, like dates and stuff match on their resume, and there's no other
yes.
jobs. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So I will look at that. The one thing though that is a trend, and I don't know, I'm curious how you feel about this or how you direct people. This whole like, it's the person's picture, it's their name, and then it's like all these things like, 10 times something and experience pharmaceuticals and this or blah, 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 like this long title. And I'm kind of like, that's too much. It's too busy.
I think the problem, and this is something when it comes to AI. So everyone, obviously AI is very important. It's the way of the future, but they go a little too crazy. And I get this with resumes a lot when I do coaching with that, where they put in every adjective, results driven, sales management, CRM management. And you're like, okay, these are things that every single rep in the world has. To put them in your resume and list all your skills, it's ridiculous. It's actually just taken away from your achievements. So I think they take the same concept and think, they're getting advice from someone like, hey, Joe, I'm only looking for President's Club winners, say. So if you search President's Club, that's what's going to come up in the search for LinkedIn. So I think that's why they're putting that in there. But I hear what you're saying. When you have 15 things listed under your name, it's like, all right, it's a little too much. But I think where the mindset comes from. So I actually don't do that, Coach. I don't say to, over hype up your LinkedIn account.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a big President's Club fan, like meaning that I don't really care if you won 3 or 4, like you said. I'm not stupid. I know you could have taken over an amazing territory from someone else, or have great coverage in your area, or have 2 doctors that are on your speaker panel that are, rock stars.
Yeah.
Unless you can't describe, like we were talking about earlier, on how you got there, it means nothing to me. So I don't really coach them to just write that everywhere, but I guess it does work, because if some people are searching that, it is going to pop up.
I guess that makes sense. It's like a Google search where you pay to have your business pop higher than other businesses. In my LinkedIn, I don't know if you remember back in the day, like when I first made LinkedIn, I remember my dad was the one who told me to make a LinkedIn, and you had to free type everything. And I don't think you could add a picture in the beginning. And then at one point in time, and because my profile has not changed that much aside from my update, the things that I do, I actually just uploaded my resume, and you know how it used to be a builder. So you just put your resume and then it built it in like that. And so that's what mine's been for. I don't even know how long I've been on LinkedIn, but so it's pretty simple. Maybe I'm boring. Do have a nice picture though. That honestly, that is one where I'm like, your LinkedIn, it's like physicians where they get their very first big kid job as an attendee at a fellowship, and they take this picture, and then you meet them and you're like, you have no hair and like 40 pounds heavier. I almost didn't recognize you. Like, make sure you got an updated LinkedIn profile picture. Have your significant other take it against a white wall if you have to. iPhones take a great picture now. So yeah, so
that is a good point, because a lot of people are very professional, but every once in a while you'll see the baseball hat on and the, shirtless photo that you're like, all right, man, like this is LinkedIn. It's not Instagram or something else.
There used to be, wasn't there a trend for a while that was like your LinkedIn, your Instagram, your MySpace, and something else, and it would show all different pictures of you? Like, different
Yeah,
things.
it's too much.
It's too much. It's too much.
But I'm going to pause one more time just before we close up here and see if there's any questions, because this has been an amazing conversation. I'm having such a great time, but I want to make sure with James. James, any questions? Anyone?
I've got like a couple comments in here.
So I have a couple statements and a question for you.
Okay.
Stylist or for clients?
Damian Adamczyk,
We'll see
just
the
a
app.
statement.
Hey,
I
one
wish there was
more.
more managers transparent like you.
Appreciate that.
Amber Bryce, I want to work for you.
Are you in Michigan? I have a spot opening soon.
And
Are you following for the
Nancy Kowalk,
Get out of here.
as a medical device sales leader with over 10 years experience in I'm guessing interventional cardiology
Yes.
and structural heart across Latin America, I have found it challenging to translate that success into opportunities in the U.S. market. Often facing rejections due to lack of local experience, how can professionals like me best position our international background to gain trust, show commitment to learning in the U.S. market, and prove we can add value from day one?
So I think that, at least for me, like, I want to sit down with you. I was one of the very first that Inari hired coming from ortho and spine. I didn't know wires and catheters. I didn't know those physicians. I had no clue. I mean, I remember walking into a hospital and asking the little sweet volunteers at the front. I was like, where's IR? And they're like, what's IR? And I'm like, interventional radiology during my interviewing. So one, I think you've got to continuously apply, and it might take 10 applications on LinkedIn or wherever to get those. And then once you're in front of the person, do research prior about the role as much as you can. Reach out on LinkedIn. Like you said about searching things on LinkedIn. I mean, you can type in a company and then you can type in people. You just have to click on people and it's going to filter people near you or filter people in that area. Send them those messages. I'm a big fan, especially when I was, before I had the salary I have today, I guess I will say I would do the free premium for a month and then write myself a note to cancel it during things, because then you could send messages freely without having, do work every angle to your advantage. And then once you get in front of those people, find the correlations, what you're doing in Latin America, what it translates there. If you've got the experience in interventional cardiology and structural heart, like, that can be the hard part. It's just then creating the relationships. But if you're coming with genuine interest and genuine ways of saying how you can correlate and how you made relationships and how you built rapport, then it'll translate. Any company is going to give you a chance if they've got in their gut, like, you're the right person because you genuinely want to work here and do a great job, if you will. So that's how you prove you can provide value. And finding, like I said, for me, everything is the correlation. Just to give it kind of a background. So I said real quick, and I'll make this very brief. Spine and ortho, I worked for Medtronic Advanced Energy, and I sold the Aquamanus and the Plasma Blade. And Aquamanus was a bipolar sealer that was a third of the temperature of a regular Bovie. Bovie cost about, 75 cents to make. Aquamanus cost a couple hundred. And so you really had to provide value of why you were using it. Well, it was less blood loss in big procedures. You could use it on the skin. So then you were going, okay, I'm going to the blood management department. I'm going to the coordinator and saying, okay, this is providing less complications because it's less heat. Long story short here, you're finding all of these benefits, and who cares about the benefit? Because truly a physician doesn't always care about the benefit, but somebody in that hospital cares about that benefit. And then you're going, okay, I've got less complications. Well, Medicare has a 90-day episode for joints. This is a big picture to the hospital, and you're elevating yourself through in that hospital. Well, then within Inari, everything is a big picture. It is still unfortunate that guidelines are not where we want them to be. And so patients are sent home on anticoagulation. Mortality rates are getting much better, but guidelines haven't changed. They actually take about 13 years to change. So you are finding your benefits and then using the whole hospital to your advantage. Who's going to care about this message? and who's really going to go, okay, we need this product, we need this program, we need this algorithm, we need to, you know, you don't want to do a disservice to these patients. So that's how I would correlate like my ortho experience to my Inari experience. So for you being in Latin America, it sounds like you have a ton of experience in the same market. You've just got to correlate how you made the relationships. That was long-winded, but hopefully that's a helpful answer to you of what it looks like. I think in my personal, and Joe, what do you think as far as how you're branching into something new? You got to sell it, I guess. I mean, it's sales, you got to sell it.
You got to sell it because you have to make people realize that when you're doing something in another country, you know, you have to make them feel comfortable that you're using the same techniques here in the US, or you're using the same techniques in your country in Latin America that are similar to the ones in the US. So the more that you can show them that, yeah, I've done this before. I might be working with different physicians that you may have never heard of in a different country. It's still the same techniques and the same professionalism that, you know, and knowledge that I'm going to just bring to your organization. And I think if you make them feel comfortable with that just because it's a different country, that it's still the same, I think that'll go far.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
hold on.
good.
Amber Bryce said she would move. So
we're about to be in great season in Detroit here. It's beautiful in the summer, not so much in the winter.
And then Devin Reeves. Hi, I actually have an interview tomorrow morning for field clinical specialist in Greenville, North Carolina. Any last minute suggestions? I've been doing all the research.
I'm going to guess that, Devin, you are interviewing possibly with Kevin Maloney or Ron Still, who are both colleagues on my team of our leadership. I think, you know, for FCSs, and I got to say, I'm going to pat myself on the back. I have 2 FCSs that we just hired, and they took to it like ducks to water. They have been absolutely amazing. So same thing, highlight what you do and how you can contribute to the team, how you can be a team player. A lot of times you're finding right now too, especially if it's a tenured team, that you've got, you know, AMs that they need a little bit of a break. One of my AMs today said he got invited to be a sub in golf league, and he hasn't golfed in golf league in 3 years. And he has a clinical now. And I said, I'll cover you. And Ashley, your clinical will cover you. Like, let's roll. You go to golf league. Like, that's important. You got to be a person and everything like that. So highlighting how you can help the team and in what challenges maybe you found in their discovery of help they need, any relationships that you have, physicians. I'm guessing if it's FCS, you've possibly been a tech before, those types of things. And then one thing that I think is a hard transition to know, and just a piece of advice, is that when you're a tech and you're side by side of a physician, if you came from that role, or you're working in the lab in any capacity with a physician, you kind of have the ability to speak really freely. I mean, I've seen techs get mad at a physician in the middle of it and go, ooh, you know, like, as it is the one kind of unfortunate part of coming to, I call it the dark side, because I was pre-med and then came to the dark side before I took my MCATs. Coming to the dark side is self-awareness. So if a physician makes you mad, unfortunately, you can't get mad back at him. You kind of have to just take it on the chin and everything like that. And as someone who was a field clinical and has had to take a lot on the chin, never let them see you cry though. Never. I've walked out of the room beforehand. Just know that those are the differences. And so maybe be aware of, you know, how the relationship's just going to change a little bit, and be conscious of it, if you will, of how you'd address it. So those would be like my last minute suggestions, how you can help the team, how you can bring value, any relationships you might have. If you are a tech, knowing the procedure is absolutely amazing. It's so helpful to us, because when you have a team that needs relief in the role of a field clinical, then you're coming in and being able to cover a case a lot sooner than someone who might not. So hopefully that's helpful.
Awesome.
Oh, Nancy says, my husband is from Michigan. I will move too.
That's great.
Latin America to Michigan is a big jump.
Well, Molly, again, this has been an absolute pleasure. You know,
Yes, thanks for
obviously,
having me.
not just me being nice. I mean, you were awesome. You could see the comments from the crowd that everyone really does respect and appreciate your, not only your knowledge, but your transparency is just great. You know, so I thank you so much. Hopefully, we can do, you know, collaborations in the future, whether it's this or anything else. You know, because
Call me anytime.
I appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time today. I want to
Yeah.
thank everyone at home or wherever you're listening for joining in. Again, we'll be doing these every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. And if you guys want a copy of the recording, please go to my YouTube channel and subscribe. It's Unfiltered Medical Sales Coaching, and you can get the recording. We'll have that uploaded up there soon. And feel free to reach out to either me, or I don't want to offer Molly's services because I'm sure
You can't reach
anyway.
out to- I mean, I will do my best to answer. I sometimes, if I'm having a busy week, I just don't look at the messages because I feel bad when it says read and I don't answer. So just know if it takes me a few days, that's usually why.
No, well, thank you again, Molly. Thank you, James, and your team for helping us out with this. This was great, and I'll keep in touch. Appreciate
Everybody
it.
have a good rest of your day.
Thank
Drive
you.
safe.
Enjoy your day. Thank you, guys. Take care.